Welcome back, everybody. These are the best films of the year 1970. We're into a brand new decade, brand new films. These films were one of the best films of the 70s. And we're going to start off with 1970 and work our way through 1979. The 70s were a great decade of some of the best films ever released, because in the 70s you start seeing the birth of the blockbusters, hence Jaws in 1975, The Exorcist, where movies were just basically blowing everybody away, and ticket sales, long lines just to get in. And then by 77 you had Star Wars, and then you started getting blockbuster films, where you just had big movie productions, big budget movies. And so the 70s brought you all that. So now that we've left the 60s, now we're going to cover the best films of the 70s, starting with the year 1970. So join me as we cover all the best films of 1970. That's going to include comedy, romance, drama, thriller, crime, horror, romance, every particular genre of the 70s. And in 1970, we're going to cover it right here, all right? Let's stick around and let's check out the best films of 1970. Patton, George C. Scott, and Carl Malden. The World War II phase of the career of controversial American General George S. Patton. Patton. War epic. Airport. Burt Lancaster, Dean Martin, George Kennedy. A bomber on board an airport almost closed by snow, and various personal problems of the people involved. Dark comedy, disaster, and action. Airport will not disappoint. Alex in Wonderland. Donald Sutherland, Ellen Bernstein. Bohemian Alex Morrison has just finished directing his first feature-length movie, Alex in Wonderland, featuring Donald Sutherland. Beneath the Planet of the Apes. James Francois, the sole survivor of an interplanetary rescue mission, searches for the only survivor of the previous expedition. Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Bloody Mama. Shelley Winters and Dawn Stroud. A psychologically disturbed matriarch presides over her damaged family of bank-robbing misfits. Bloody Mama. This movie is a dark comedy and true crime. The Boatniks. Robert Morse. Newly assigned to duty in the Coast Guard at Newport Beach, a young ensign finds himself involved in romantic complications. The Boatniks, comedy and family. Carter's Army. Stephen Boyd and Robert Hooks. A racist officer is put in charge of a squad of black troops charged with taking an important bridge from the Germans. Carter's Army. Catch-22, Alan Arkin, Martin Balsam, Richard Benjamin. A man is trying desperately to be certified insane during World War II so he can stop flying missions. Catch-22. Chisholm, John Wayne and Forrest Tucker. Cattle Baron John Chisholm joins forces with Billy the Kid and Pat Garrett to fight the Lincoln County Land War. Next up we have is Cold Sweat, Charles Bronson and James Mason. With his wife and daughter being held hostage, a seasoned ex-military man is involved in a shady smuggling operation to save his family. Cold Sweat. Count Dracula, Christopher Lee. Count Dracula, a vampire who regains his youth by drinking the blood of maidens. Count Dracula, vampire horror, drama, and horror. Connecting Rooms, Betty Davis and Michael Redgrave. Explores the relationships shared by the residents of a seedy boarding house in London. Connecting Rooms, drama. Count Yorga, vampire, Robert Query. A couple invites a count from Hungary who recently immigrated to America to conduct a seance for the woman's recently deceased mother, oblivious to the fact that he is actually a vampire. Hoffman. Peter Sellers. A businessman blackmails his attractive young secretary into spending a weekend with him. Hoffman. Drama. Next up we have is There Was a Crooked Man. Kirk Douglas, Henry Fonda. A charming but totally ruthless criminal is sent to a remote Arizona prison. There Was a Crooked Man, slapstick comedy and western. Dad, Can I Borrow the Car? Kurt Russell. A live-action short using many avant-garde film techniques that looks like an American car culture in the late 1960s. Dad, Can I Borrow the Car? Darling Lily. Julie Andrews and Rock Hudson. Set during World War I, this movie is a cute spin on the Mata Hari legend. Darling Lily. Romantic comedy and drama. Dirty Dingus McGee. Dirty Dingus McGee and his old rival Hokey Birdsall take turns at being either lawmen or outlaw. Frank Sinatra, George Kennedy, and Ann Jackson. Dirty Dingus McGee. Dreams of Glass. Anne is prominent Japanese-American family owners of a famous nursery and greenhouse. Dreams of Glass. Next up we have is Hey Amigo, Rest in Peace. Wade Preston. Spaghetti Western. A postman officer, Dub Williams, pursues a group of outlaws who have robbed a stagecoach in Texas. Hey Amigo, Rest in Peace. End of the Road. Stacy Keach and Harris Yulin. After a stay in an asylum, Jacob takes a job as an English lecturer and begins a disastrous affair with Rennie, the wife of a colleague. 5 Easy Pieces. Jack Nicholson, Karen Black. A dropout from upper-class American picks up a work along the way on oil rigs when his life is spent in a squalid succession of bars. Flap. Anthony Quinn and Claude Aiken. Comedy based on the plight of modern Aboriginal Americans living on reservations. Flap. Drama and Western. Getting Straight. Elliot Gould and Candice Bergen. A Vietnam vet, former social radical, is conflicted by his desire to become a teacher and his sympathy with an anti-establishment student protest. Getting Straight. Hi Mom. Robert De Niro, Alan Garfield, Charles Journey. A Vietnam vet moves into an apartment and peers through other people's windows across the street. Hi Mom, comedy and drama. House of Dark Shadows. Jonathan Frid. Vampire Barnabas Collins is accidentally released from his centuries-long confinement at his family's estate. House of Dark Shadows. Supernatural horror. How Awful About Alan. Anthony Perkins and Julie Harris. After an 8-month stay in a mental hospital, a tormented man comes home to live with his sister, but a mysterious boarder may try to kill him. How Do I Love Thee? Jackie Gleason, Maureen O'Hara. Stanley Waltz seeks forgiveness after a good deed backfired regarding the poem How Do I Love Thee? Comedy and drama. Hunters Are for Killing. Burt Reynolds and Martin Balsam. A man comes home after serving time in prison to claim his share of his deceased mother's estate. Hunters Are for Killing. Husbands. Ben Gazzara and Peter Falk. After the death of a common friend, 3 married men leave their lives together, seeking pleasure and freedom, and ultimately leaving for London. Husbands. Kelly's Heroes. Clint Eastwood, Telly Savalas, Don Rickles, Carol O'Connor, and Donald Sutherland. A group of U.S. soldiers sneaks across enemy lines in World War II France to get their hands on a secret stash of Nazi treasure. Little Big Man. Dustin Hoffman, Faye Dunaway. Jack Crabb, looking back from an extreme old age, tells of his life being raised by Native Americans and fighting with General Custer. Little Big Man. Love Story. Ollie McGraw and Ryan O'Neal. A boy and his girl from different backgrounds fall in love regardless of their upbringing, and then tragedy strikes. Love Story. Loving. George Segal, Eva Marie Saint. In this romantic comedy drama, George Segal stars as a freelance artist who's attempting to revitalize his career, just as his marriage to Eva Marie Saint begins to fall. MASH. Donald Sutherland, Elliot Gould, Tom Skerritt. The staff of a Korean War field hospital uses humor and hijinks to keep their sanity in the face of the horror of war. MASH. Macho Callahan, David Jansen, and Gene Seberg. Macho Callahan breaks out of a Confederate military prison, intent on revenge against the man who conscripted into the army. The Molly Maguires, Sean Connery, Richard Harris. In 1876 Pennsylvania, a group of Irish immigrant coal miners began to retaliate against the cruelty of their work environment. The Molly Maguires. Mr. Super Invisible, Dean Jones, and Philip Leroy. A scientist becomes invisible after he swallows an Indian potion. Comedy, fantasy, and romance. Night Chase featuring David Jansen and Yaphet Kotto. A taxi driver hired to drive a fugitive criminal to the Mexican border forms an unlikely friendship with his passenger. Night Chase. Norwood, Glenn Campbell, and Kim Darby. A Vietnam veteran returns to his Texas home but feels restless and decides to become a radio singer. Based on the novel by Charles Portis. Norwood. The Old Man Who Cried Wolf. Edward G. Robinson and Martin Balsam. Emil Pulska is visiting his old friend Abe Stillman. During the visit, they are attacked, and Emil is struck senseless. The Old Man Who Cried Wolf. One More Time. Sammy Davis Jr. and Peter Lawford. Two nightclub owners find themselves in trouble with the law. One More Time. Comedy and thriller. Next up we have is the classic, The Out-of-Towners. Comedy. Jack Lemmon and Sandy Dennis. Ohio sales executive George Kellerman accepts a higher position within the company and travels to New York City with his wife Gwen. The Owl and the Pussycat. Barbra Streisand, George Siegel, and Robert Klein. A stuffy author enters into an explosive relationship with his neighbor, a foul-mouthed, freewheeling prostitute. Pippi and the South Seas. Inger Nilsson. With the help of her friends Tommy and Annika, Pippi Longstocking ventures to the South Pacific island, Porto, to rescue her father. I love Pippi Longstocking. Pippi on the Run. Fed up with their strict parents, Tommy and Annika run away from home with their friend Pippi Longstocking to look after them in their long trek. Inger Nilsson. We love Pippi Longstocking. We love her. The Mackenzie Break. Brian Keith and Helmut Green. During World War II, German POWs in Britain plot to escape from their prison camp in Scotland. Next up we have is Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. Parody, satire, and comedy. Singer Kelly McNamara, swinger Casey Anderson, and soul sisters Petronella are sexy super vixens who move to Hollywood. Puffin Stuff. HR Puffin Stuff. From the land of the lost producers comes a family comedy filled with mirth, magic, and music about a little boy named Jimmy and his fantastic adventures with a dragon and his magic flute. And next that we have is Puppet on a Chain. Following a triple professional hit, a U.S. agent arrives in Amsterdam to investigate a heroin smuggling ring. Rio Lobo, John Wayne, and George Rivero. After the Civil War, Cord McNally searches for the two traitors whose treachery caused the defeat of McNally's unit and the loss of a close friend. Rio Lobo. Ryan's Daughter. Robert Mitchum and Trevor Howard. Set in the wake of 1916's Easter Rising, a married woman in a small Irish village has an affair with a troubled British officer. Santo contra Bulimon en la Atlántida. A Nazi scientist threatens to destroy civilization with a nuclear bomb from his base in Atlantis. Santo, the Mexican wrestler, must save the day. Santo versus the Riders of Terror. This takes place as a Western, and Santo basically starts killing off Western zombies in the West. We love Santo movies. Santo and Blue Demon versus the monsters. Again, we have Santo and his sidekick Blue Demon battling Frankenstein, Wolfman, Dracula, the Mummy. These movies are great. Scars of Dracula, Christopher Lee. A young man is murdered while spending the night at Count Dracula's castle, prompting his brother to come to the small town where all the traces end to look for him. Scars of Dracula. Santa Claus is coming to town. A mailman reveals the origin of Santa Claus. Fred Astaire and Mickey Rooney are the voices of Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Holiday animation. Scrooge. A musical retelling of Charles Dickens' classical novel about an old bitter miser taken on a journey of self-redemption. Scrooge. Albert Finney and Alec Guinness. Next up we have Skullduggery. Burt Reynolds and Susan Clark. The missing link is found on a safari in New Guinea. Is it human or animal? Skullduggery. Adventure. Smoke. Adventure, drama, and family. As a teenager has difficulty coping with his mother's remarriage, he finds and nurses back to health a German Shepherd. Smoke. Start the Revolution Without Me. Gene Wilder and Donald Sutherland. Two mismatched sets of identical twins, one aristocrat, one peasant, mistakenly exchanged identities on the eve of the French Revolution. Suppose they gave a war and nobody came. Brian Keith, Tony Curtis, and Ernest Borgnine. Tensions grow between the small army base and people from the nearby town. Despite well intentions of people from both sides, it escalates after the big dance in town. Taste the Blood of Dracula, Christopher Lee. After killing his disciple, three English gentlemen unwittingly resurrect Count Dracula. Taste of Blood of Dracula. Tell Me That You Love Me, Junie Moon. Liza Minnelli and Kent Howard. The story of three wildly neurotic characters. Tell Me That You Love Me, Junie Moon. Comedy, drama, and romance. The Brotherhood of the Bell. Glenn Ford and Rosemary Forsyth. A successful professor has his life disrupted by a secret from his past. Drama and thriller. The Brotherhood of the Bell. The Cockeyed Cowboys of Calico County. When the town's sole blacksmith vows to leave because he was stood up by his mail-order bride from the east, the panicked townsfolk scramble to find him a surrogate wife. Dan Blocker and Jim Backus. The Owl and the Pussycat. Barbara Streisand and George Segal. A stuffy author enters into an explosive relationship with his neighbor, a foul-mouthed, freewheeling prostitute, hooker, a slut. The Phantom Toll Booth. Milo is a boy who is bored with life. One day he comes home to find a toll booth in his room. The Phantom Toll Booth. Hand-drawn animation. The World of the Dead with Santo and Blue Demon. This time, Santo and Blue Demon must take on a 300-year-old witch with a really bad attitude. The World of the Dead, another great movie with the two wrestlers. The Adventurers. The wealthy playboy son of an assassinated South American diplomat discovers that his father was really murdered on orders of the corrupt president of the country. The Adventurers. The Boys in the Band. Dark comedy, drama, and gay. Temper spray and true selves are revealed when a heterosexual accidentally intrudes on a homosexual party. The Boys in the Band. The Challenge. Darren McGavin. Gallery, a U.S. commando, and Euro, an enemy commando, are sent to a no-man's Pacific jungle island to capture a crashed U.S. space satellite. The Challenge. The Moonshine War. Patrick McGoohan, a federal agent, attempts to make some real money before the alcohol ban is lifted. The Moonshine War. Heist, comedy, crime, and drama. The Strawberry Statement. An apolitical college student joins a group of campus protesters to meet girls but gets swept up in their cause and involved in violent confrontations. The Wild Country, Steve Forrest. A family leaves city life to take possession of a Wyoming ranch. Action, adventure, comedy, and drama. The Wild Country. There's a Girl in My Soup. Peter Sellers and Goldie Hawn. In their sexual game, an egotistical, womanizing television host meets his match, Marion, who seeks to remain one step ahead of him. Too Late, The Hero, Michael Caine and Cliff Robertson. A reluctant hero, American Lieutenant Sam Lawson is second to a motley British unit tasked with destroying a Japanese radio on Philippine Island. Tora, Tora, Tora. The story of 1941 Japanese air raid on Pearl Harbor. Tora, Tora, Tora. Jason Robards and Martin Balsam. The Tribe. Darren McGavin and Jan Michael Vincent. Marine Corps drill instructor Tom Drake, who is disgusted by the fact that the Corps' now accepts draftees, is pitted against draftee hippie Adrian. The Tribe. Trog. A sympathetic anthropologist uses drugs and surgery to try to communicate with a primitive troglodyte who was found living in a local cave. Trog. The 12 Chairs. In 1920 Soviet Russia, a fallen aristocrat, a priest, and a con artist searched for a treasure of jewel hidden inside one of the 12 dining chairs. The 12 Chairs. Two Mules for Sister Sarah, Clint Eastwood and Shirley MacLaine. When a former Civil War soldier saves a nun from a gang of bandits, they team up to help the Mexicans in their war against the French. Waterloo. Facing the decline of everything he has worked to obtain, Conqueror Napoleon Bonaparte and his army confront the British at the Battle of Waterloo. Rod Steiger, Christopher Plummer, and Orson Welles. Weekend of Terror. 3 nuns on a weekend trip are held hostage by escaped convicts. Richard Conrad, Carl Lindley, and Lee Majors. Where's Papa? When an attorney meets the girl of his dreams, he fears that his baby mother will scare her off, so he schemes to eliminate the senile old woman. Where's Papa? Which way to the front? Brendan Byers Ill is a wealthy playboy who wants to serve his country as a soldier. Jerry Lewis and John Wood. Slapstick comedy and war. You Can't Win 'Em All. Tony Curtis and Charles Bronson. During the 1922 Turkish Civil War, 2 Americans and a group of foreign mercenaries offer their services to a local Turkish governor. You Can't Win 'Em All. Zigzag. Crime, drama, and thriller. In order to collect the ransom offered by the family of a kidnapped industrialist, a terminally ill man frames himself for the crime when he accidentally uncovers the real culprit. Zigzag. Those were the best films that came out in 1970. What were some of your favorite films in that year? Were there any films that I may have left out? If so, leave them in the comment section below. So thank you for joining me. We're now into the decade of the 70s, and those were the best films of 1970. Stay tuned next for the next video. Thank you.